Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Fight Chat Friday from TKD Coach Academy. This is our episode 194, and we're going back to the European Championships in Lublin, Poland for a little look at the female minus 60 kilos senior final. It's between Sam Del Rock from the Netherlands and Auhora Donheim Berle from Norway. So, interesting fight. Haven't seen Auhora before, so this is going to be an interesting one for me. And it brings a little bit of experience from Sam in this particular division, and just seeing what Auhora is going to do to tackle that experience. She's going to know more probably about Sam than Sam knows about her, so it becomes an interesting one to watch from that basis.
Yeah, so she did take out the current world champion in the semi-final, so obviously she's not that she just kind of got drafted into the final. She actually got there on merit, which is important to note as well. But Sam starting out in red, nice and strong with that front leg position, trying to squeeze a little bit of space, and she does quite well actually to relieve that space with her own front leg carry. We do say often that the carries in the female game are used a lot to dictate spacing rather than to use anything to set up another shot, so we do see that often.
Yeah, and one of the things we'll see, as we go through this first round and into the second round, that Auhora does carry her front hand, or does defend the hands very, very well with her front hand. She kind of has Sam stopped at distance, so she's preserving a little space with her front hand and then retreating into her stance. Quite effective as well with that little front leg side kick to the hip there. So again, only the one judge seeing it, or maybe the first and fourth card, and then a second one. So that one not seen at all, it seems.
Steps on the side kicks a little bit, but also gets away with it because of her foot position is so good. She lifts with the sole of the foot leading rather than any kind of lift with the shin or the knee first. So she always has that good foot position no matter how close she is. So that's very, very important. But now we see kind of like halfway through, Sam trying to open up a little bit, just trying to get a bit of a feeler, obviously in the lead, so a little bit more comfortable, able to counter a little bit more where she is nice and comfortable to be able to do that. But now it's 3-1 and it's switching over a little bit. But the cards are quite close, as we can see. There's only one score between each. And we haven't major warnings yet with any kind of implications there. So far, it's just an open game, really.
Yeah, again, we can see Sam looking to go back to the well with that turning kick. Got her a good purchase early on, and she's looking to find the range for it again. Aurora doing a nice job of varying the length of her side kick just to make that turning kick a little more difficult to judge. And Sam concedes her second warning.
Yeah, so like that foot or that ring position probably not ideal here, because you're just going to be putting yourself in an unwanted position for the other person to bring everything they have towards you. So yeah, you want to be avoiding that as best as possible, because you're only really going to end up giving away space. And we see then because of that it flips a little bit 2-1, still very, very close. Match up for grabs in the second round. So we see girls open up a little bit more, but again, the front hand position from Norway, as you mentioned, is good. We kind of like want to see that front leg, front hand versus a little bit more of lateral movement, which you expect from Sam, as well as her direct front leg, front hand herself. But we'll see that she's able to open up with the turning kicks and able to put a little more together rather than just a direct front leg, front hand that we see so often.
Yeah, caught on the hands there, or the hand caught again by Norway as Sam came in, and we can kind of see that kind of instinctive reaction, putting the turning kick into the back. So sometimes the left-legged fighter will get the advantage there, and we can see that that turning kick off the back leg is open for Sam simply because she has that left-legged opponent. That turning kick isn't a shot that's available to her if her opponent is right-legged as well.
Yeah, this one is scored nicely on this ring. Some rings, they don't tend to score that back leg counter dolio underneath, especially considering that it's impossible for all four sides to see it, but it seems to get nice return. Sam is on her bike now, moving around and pulling, and without what we said earlier in the first round, backing herself into corners too much, with more circling, which is really, really good, showing her experience. And then she's using that to be that little bit of a step ahead. And then when Auhora has to make that little bit of a dive, she's able to be a step ahead and pull her into maybe side kicks like we see here, or just be able to pull her onto some hands of her own as well, which is a good strategy when you're a little bit ahead.
Interesting to see good pressure on that. We'll say that effort to get the hands from Auhora, and Sam wasn't able to stay standing or to recover her balance to get the full score on that side kick. So that was very, very helpful. So the game is still very, very close here. Again, that 1 point game, and we did get a couple of switches in terms of the lead as the match went on.
Yeah, Sam is very clear with her hands. When it does get close, she always tends to be above and on top with the hands. It just makes a clearer visual, which is something that's very important, as we've noted in the last couple of fights as well. So even though both girls are getting to the hands and being able to match a little bit, just by being that little bit above, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be taller or whatever, but just by having that overhand, let's say, it gives you a clearer shot through and just makes you get that bit of a purchase.
I do like Sam's defensive work here, holding her ground. She's not deliberately circling too much, but she's keeping that front leg very, very busy, mixing between middle and high, making it difficult and dangerous for Auhora to go through to seek that extra shot. Really important because she was on the 5 warnings, and because for most of those last 10 seconds or so, this was within one point on 3 cards. It was definitely a thing where Sam did not want to be playing with the edges of the ring and risking that exit.
Yeah, one thing that Sam does really good that I like is she backs up, sometimes uses the leg, and then directly goes to the hands. So we always talk about those re-engagements with hands, where we see some people, they might just like move around, flick in a front leg and then move around again. It's like she's almost looking for the breaks in play to be able to re-engage with hands, which is a very, very effective strategy. We actually seen it last week as well with Nicolette. Even though she was miles ahead, scored 2 headshots in the corner, automatically just go right back into the hands as well. It's a good habit to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, obviously congratulations, very well done to Sam. Great to get a European title and, to do it in quite solid fashion, quite composed fashion. I mean, there was a very, very tight match. Auhora did a fantastic job keeping the match tight and working very, very hard to make sure that Sam had to be on her game until the very last moment with it. So again, I suppose congratulations to both girls. I think, certainly for me anyway, it's my first time seeing Auhora at the semi-finals final stage.
Yeah, so we do have some stats as well that we'll get into here and see what the numbers are behind this particular fight.
Oops.
Apologies,
wrong slide.
When we're getting those up, we can see the front leg carry again is something that is a big factor in the female game. Well, it's a big factor in both male and female, but we see the front leg carry used either with a side kick generally or with something else, maybe hands. And I think that this one is a particular example of where the front leg carry was used just to manipulate space most of the time, and maybe just get a little bit closer to invite your opponent to attack with something that maybe you can pull a counter from.
Yeah, again, we can see that there wasn't too much use of the turning kick from Norway in this case. The side kick tended to be the go-to, and the stance and the positioning of the feet would kind of suggest that anyway, whereas Sam did intend to follow her front leg carry occasionally with hands or again repeating into the Dolia Chagi. So you get to see that slight difference. Also with the hands, where Sam, she had 1 or 2 occasions where she went to hands directly, either from close range or then from a little further with the blitz. But there was also a few of those backhand counters attempted, not always getting huge return, sometimes getting caught in the side kick with it as well. But because she went back to it, she eventually did get the return on it.
Yeah, the side kick was used quite well by both girls from time to time, and there was a battle there to get that leg on top. And we see once or twice Sam got a score for being on top when she just came out of the first round, I think. And then Norway did a great job at using that front leg side kick to get scores for herself as well. But we see when you look at that contact made of 16, probably not enough to be able to pull a final in the Euros. Probably need that rate to be a little bit higher, which means you obviously have to attempt a little bit more. So because of that more counter style, and this is something that I was guilty of as well, when you kind of have a more of a counter style, you're relying on the other person to kind of bring the action that you can pull gaps from, but you have to be able to mix and match and be able to up that contact rate yourself as well to bring the fight to them, which is very, very important because you lose control a lot of the time.
I think a little bit like last week's fight as well with Nicolette and Adelina, we see that the majority of the numbers were built in the second round in this match as well. So there was a lower pace of activity in the first minute or so, and then things picked up. So although we're looking at a number of attempts of like 48 from Sam and 35 from Auhora, I think the majority of that came in the last 2.5 to 3 minutes of the match. So proportionally, the work rate for the majority of the time is probably higher than it looks here. But at the same time, that's because both competitors agreed to having a lower work rate. You can't decide by yourself to have a low work rate. If your opponent decides to push, you're going to have to do something and respond. So definitely, you think if you haven't got the lead, or if you haven't got a comfortable lead, there is something to be said for upping the work rate, getting more attempts, getting more contacts, and seeing what comes your way.
Yeah, and that's harder to do, especially in the first round, because you're probably a bit more nervous to give anything big away in a final of Euros. Yeah. So a little bit more cagey generally.
So we can see that compared to some of the other fights we've looked at, this is a relatively low frequency of contact. So once every 9.2 seconds for Sam, once every 15 for Auhora. Relatively low number of warnings. Sam managed to avoid the second deduction, and Auhora didn't get to any deductions whatsoever. And actually, when you look at the next one, just make note of the 11 restarts there. But when you look at the next one and the safety margin of 2 points that Sam had, that very, very quickly becomes 3 if Auhora concedes an extra warning, or it becomes only 1 if Sam concedes the warning. So right at the end, the warnings were very, very well managed by the girls, certainly, and 1 warning would have made a difference. It would have been able to bring it to a draw, I think, if Sam had gotten the 6th warning.
Yeah, that obviously ties into the bottom right-hand side of the screen, flags in play. So there was 3 flags available, which means if Auhora was able to get into contact once more and maybe force that exit or a fall or whatever that may be, she probably could have had a chance to at least bring it back to a draw, which would have been very effective for her and get into the extra round, maybe just settle her down a little bit. But yeah, composure from Sam. She's experienced, been there before. She knows how to close out a fight, so obviously that's a big factor as well. We see the contacts and another similar number of levels, but actually Auhora getting the better of this one, but coming out on the losing side, which is a little bit interesting. She was first in contact more times, and they're matching each other then in contact to get that last score, which is important. So obviously they're maybe she wasn't initiating enough, like we said, with 16 contacts, but then the fact that she was able to maximize when she was in contact obviously kept this fight quite close. So yeah, an interesting strategy.
Yeah, it's also the thing that sometimes if it's a single shot, just a straight front leg side kick to the hip or something, it doesn't really pick up in our exchanges because there is no interaction of the competitors at that stage. So that can be a thing where Sam was maybe effective once or twice in terms of just putting the single backhand or a single front hand in that was effective. So but it is certainly something that we're looking at, because it does seem to be that when you look at more and more and more matches, the person who finishes the exchange is still seeming to get pretty good value of it. But the fact that the numbers are so close for the girls here is reflected in the overall score. It's been quite a close overall score. It wasn't too much in it, with the exception of 1 card, and it did have that very drawish kind of feel for certain periods of the match.
Yeah, and then if we look at the triad of control, we see Sam probably more in control of the tempo and the intensity, and that showed as well towards the end. She did look composed and able to kind of close out that fight and control the intensity, not get too excited with her opponent drawing her in and giving away silly exits or silly warnings to bring her to that 6, for example. Ring control was given the nod to Norway, being able to control the ring space a little bit more, push it a little bit more in the first round in particular, and to squeeze a little bit more space. And in the distance battle, we gave it as a tie. Both girls were able to manage the distance between both fighters quite well. Obviously, once they got engaged in, that's where a lot of the scores came from. Once or twice, there were some single shots in the distance battle, but that really came from getting your leg on top as opposed to controlling any big space with the distance.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, huge congratulations to Sam on her European Championships win. Again, well done to Auhora, and based on that performance, I'm sure we'll be seeing more of her in the future. Obviously for Espen as well, coaching on the Norwegian side, used to seeing Espen as a competitor, so seeing him as a coach and sitting there coaching in a final is quite a nice thing to see. So congrats Espen, and hopefully you enjoyed that experience, and we'll see you in the coach's chair for more of them into the future. Folks, that's all we have for this week. Thanks for staying with us, and we'll have more European Championships fights the next couple of weeks coming up soon.
Catch you then.